that in Australia, and I learned that it's really about community and place. And I also learned that in small communities, what we all know as schools are often the center of small communities. And I realized that teachers cannot just be teachers, they have to be community developers. That teachers and youth have to participate in the work of making communities more prosperous. And that they can contribute, and they should contribute into making their place someplace where children want to be from, where teachers want to live, and where children could go away to get a college education and come back to, or could stay and have a way to be economically sustainable in their own communities. So I realized that as I started studying that I needed to think more broadly about education and teaching, and I had to look at economic development and community development and the concept of placemaking. And so in the last year I've been meeting with various faculty on campus from different disciplines, and we've been talking about how can we all work together to know what each other's already doing, and how can we be better at participating with our 12-county region. And I'm particularly interested in our 11 rural counties that our university serves, in thinking about how are we looking across all of our programs and engaging teachers and youth in their communities in ways that increase the quality of life and increase our own sense of where we're from. The first thing I tell my teachers is, if you go to a community and you don't think much of that community, then you don't think much of the children who live there. So it's really important that you develop an understanding of the assets and the strengths and the value of that community and the people in it, so that you can see your students as valuable as well. So that's the kind of the work that I'm doing. And so of course I view poverty reduction from an education standpoint, that increasing literacy rates, increasing high school graduation rates, increasing college-going culture are very important. And I'm thrilled that Chico State is now partnering with North State Together, which is a new organization that is going to bring together Expect More Tehama, Reach Higher Shasta, and in 3 other counties. And they're already doing this amazing grassroots work in counties in this region. Like, I'm amazed and fascinated and in awe of the work that Expect More Tehama and Reach Higher Shasta and now North State Together is going to do for education and our communities. Ultimately, I think it's going to bring prosperity to all of this area with a focus on education. So that's my interest in and the work that I'm engaged in right now.
Thank you. I'm Orle Jackson with Tehama Together. In thinking about this panel today, it took me back 3/4 of a century. It took me back to my early life. When I started thinking about poverty and what impact it's had on me, I guess it was for the first time I really thought about my early years growing up in upstate New York. The value that our family had was measured in how many milk cows we had. And so we had about 15 milk cows. And so when things got tough, you would sell a cow. And I'm not complaining. I think it was a benefit of being in that kind of environment. It was a small rural town, 5 miles out of that town of 1,000 people, with 28 people in my graduating class.
Wow.
And so it was totally rural, totally low income, and I have no complaints. I think it probably was a better childhood than many urban or suburban families may have had. There was love, there was compassion, there were neighbors, there was support down the road, and so it was I think a real rewarding experience. From that time, I too decided to go into education, and so I started teaching junior and senior high school science, and I taught. My first teaching job was in a school in upstate New York in the Mohawk Valley of about 100 kids in the graduating class. It was a huge school. My second job, I decided I wanted to make a change, and so for comparison, I decided I would respond to some ads in the school in my in the journal of the Professional Association for Teachers, and so I applied for a job in Caracas. And the next thing I knew, the damn superintendent was flying in to interview me. And I had no idea that I ever wanted to go to South America. But he made an offer, and come to find out he had graduated from the same college I had in upstate New York. And so here I was on my first flight in my life off to Caracas for a year to teach. And that was a totally different experience, because back in those days, all the kids that were in this private American school were the children of U.S. employees who were in Caracas, and the kids all had a closer relationship with their maids and their nannies than they did with their parents. So it was totally opposite of the way I was brought up, and it was a real learning experience. But they were desperate for love and compassion. I remember I was teaching science, taking them on a field trip and taking them snorkeling at the beach. And I never had to worry where they were, because I could always feel one of them right behind me, because they'd never been to the beach before and never been snorkeling. They go to Europe on vacation, but had not explored the country of Venezuela. And so it was a real positive experience, totally different. Following that, I ended up in the West Coast in California, teaching in the Bay Area, and that was another experience too, because I was teaching in San Leandro, and the principal decided that we needed to have a foreign exchange student, so we had one student come from Oakland to join the white student body of San Leandro. And so that was how we had our cultural experience in San Leandro. But it was a great experience. It was a large school, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So that's just a little of my history of poverty and my life experience. But basically, I'm involved here in Tehama County with Tehama Together, and with Tehama Together we started 8 years ago, and our job is to fill in the nooks and crannies of services that are missing here. And the one service that was our first service that we established and is most relevant to what we're talking about today is the 211 program, which is the program where if you dial 211 on the phone, you get a live operator and you can find whatever service you may need. And this service is primarily for low-income people. All of the services on 211 are nonprofit or governmental. And so we have about 300 agencies that are in our database where we can then refer those services to the people that call. We're in our third year now, and we get about 100 calls a month, about 1,000 searches online. And so it was a way of bringing the whole community together, because we had to raise money, we had to get endorsements of nonprofits, and we had to have information about 300 different services that were available. And so it was a way in which we were able to work with all the other people in the community. And so it's a way in which we are able to, I guess, the question was justice versus health. Well, I feel like we are providing a real service to those who are low income in the county and making it a one-stop shop for them to get, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's child care, whatever it is, of trying to make those services available. So that's how we fit into Tehama County.
Thanks. It's been interesting seeing the different connections. We had the raised Catholic table over here. And both of my parents grew up in different kinds of poverty. My father, urban poverty connected to the Depression and Second World War, and my mom, rural poverty in Mississippi. Wound up going after the Peace Corps to upstate New York to study. And one of my first jobs was doing 100 qualitative interviews in the Adirondacks Park of low-income families, which was both beautiful being there and very instructive, and did research at a graduate level of survival strategies of women in Mississippi, and then micro-enterprise workers in Costa Rica. So a lot of different kind of asset-based looking, we were very clear about the challenges, but what are the strategies that families come up with? What are the resources they find, the assets they use, the ways they approach things? And in many ways, the initiative I'm involved with has some of that tone to it. So the Chancellor's Office gave last year, I believe it was $250 million to the 113 community colleges for an Access and Equity Initiative. Started in 2014. It started in 1994, but with no money. I know, like a big anomaly, right? Like, oh, you're supposed to write this plan for equity and inclusion, but we're not going to give you money. Well, 2014, they decided if we really want you to do this work, if we want to decrease the achievement gaps among the different groups of students that we see, and we want equity of outcomes, meaning that we're not going to treat everyone equally. What we want is that there's equity in terms of if you came here, you're able to stay around. If you come here enrolled in a certificate or program, you succeed, that it's equitable at that level. So there's money now, you know how things change. There's money now for community colleges to do this work. At our college, the focus is really creating a sense of belonging for students, communities of belonging, feeling that their voice is heard, represented, because there's a lot of research on that, the connection between that sense of belonging and retention and success. The overarching big focus is really decreasing the achievement gap. So the money for each school is targeted to those populations, the big list identified by the state, where we are seeing achievement gaps. Every community college has gaps for students. So for example, in terms of course completion and success, and degree and certificate completion, one of our 5 areas are African American, American Indian, Hispanic Latino students, foster youth, and some low-income youth. We see bigger achievement gaps. What the state says, if you're seeing those big achievement gaps, the institution needs to respond differently. It's not that all those students are out there not doing their homework, right, as a group. So from an equity perspective, what do we need to be doing different in terms of cultural responsiveness of instruction, in terms of just-in-time or preemptive support, enhanced support services, looking at policy barriers. So the same kind of institutional that Stephanie brought up earlier, changes is a big part of the initiative. So there's a number of different things that we do. It's an 88-page plan on our website for your light reading pleasure. But the strategies overall are in terms of professional learning and training, both for faculty, staff, students, cultural change on campus and institutional change in terms of removing barriers, and enhanced student support targeted towards those student populations that most need it.
Okay, our first question is, can you share an example of how a range of partners were or are important in your work and the field more broadly? So specifically the types of partners that you're working with, and maybe a little bit about how that benefits you.
This is a perfect question for Tehama Together, because we are basically a collaborative group that tries to bring people together to solve local problems. So every project that we have is basically reaching out in the community and finding who can partner with us in trying to accomplish this. I mentioned the 211 program. That was our first partnership where we had to get 20 different agencies to be supportive and to document that they wanted 211 to come to the county. The second project that we initiated was what we call the Tehama County Nonprofit Roundtable. We had been involved with a program that was sponsored by the Community Action Agency, where for several months we joined with 6 other nonprofits to go through some training. And when we got done, we said, hey, we like each other. We think it's beneficial to stay together and to invite our friends to join us. And so Tehama together then took on the responsibility of informally forming the nonprofit roundtable for the county. And for the last 3.5 years, we have met on the 3rd Friday of the month for a meeting, and we have approximately 30 to 35 different nonprofits that attend, not all at one time. Usually there's 10 to 15 of them, but to get 10 to 15 organizations in one room once a month for an hour and a half, sharing is really an important resource. And with that group, what we basically do are, how can we help each other? How can we make sure that we're not duplicating services? How can we make sure we haven't scheduled 3 fundraising dinners on the same day? And so it's been a great asset then for the county, and we're real proud of it. We have, we're sort of proud because Butte County had one of those for a while, and I haven't heard anything about it recently. Shasta County had one for a while, and I haven't heard anything about it. And so, but we're trudging along here in Tehama County, and we'll be meeting a week from Friday. And I think it'd be a good time to have one of your representatives there. Passage was there last month, so. So that's our nonprofit roundtable. The third thing that's really apropos to what's going on here today is that with my agricultural background on the dairy farm and working in a farm in a market on a farm on the coast of San Mateo County, when I came here, I was really interested in how do we bring all of the areas of agriculture and nutrition and food together. And so we formed what, with the help of Chico State, what became known as the Tehama County Community Food Alliance. And so it's another group that meets monthly. We're just the conveners. We have about 20 different groups there that are involved with meeting monthly. And we basically see how we can support our farmers markets. We've developed a directory of local U-Pick locations. We are doing a fundraiser for the food banks in the county. And so the Community Food Alliance has become a real asset to the county. We're part of the State Food Policy Council. And so it's our way here in the county to deal with the issues that we're talking about here today. So again, it's a place where it's working with partnerships and bringing them together to deal with a common problem. Just very, excuse me, those are our 3 main programs, but we also are fiscal agents for several other programs. We sponsor the annual low-income children's Christmas festivals by invitation, where about 300 families show up and each of their kids get a gift and have Santa. And again, this is a collaborative group where there's a community group that we chair that sponsors that particular activity. We also are the leaders in the Tehama County Veterans Collaborative. The veterans groups in the county had not been working together. Veterans groups do great things, but we did not have a strong local veteran service office 3 years ago, and programs were fragmented. So we pulled together veterans groups, and that led to the formation of the Tehama County Veterans Collaborative that meets monthly and basically brings private businesses and the County Veteran Service Office and veterans groups together. In the last 3 years, our small county Veteran Service Office has brought in more than between $2 and $3 million of benefits for our local seniors, our local veterans who had not been signed up for those resources before. So those are just some of the areas. Everything we do is collaboration with agencies. And one of the benefits of that is our office is located in a business office in downtown Red Bluff, where for the first 2 years it was donated space. And so we were really pleased with that, and now it's very low rent. But it brought us in contact with other groups in the county. And so one of the offices that was there was a mortgage office. And so we quickly became friends with the operator of the mortgage office. I saw, well, she's pretty nice. Let's invite her to join the board. So we got her on our board of directors. And the more she was there, the more she got involved. And knowing that we wanted to have some impact in the county, some of us had a little conversation with her one day and said, well, why don't you run for the Board of Supervisors? And so I'd like to introduce the Vice President of the Board of Tehama Together and the Vice President of the Board of the County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Candy Carlson. So we're real happy to have a member of the Board of Supervisors on our board on our behalf. So those are some of the partnerships we've been involved with.
You know, when I saw this question, I think everything that we do has to be about partnerships and relationships. You know, Ann was talking about the North State Together, which has been a relationship not only with Expect More Tehama and Reach Higher Shasta and others, but with our local McConnell Foundation, which was for a long time, that was a slow, long building of relationships with our administration with that, that foundation. And kind of came about by a president saying, we have a $200 million foundation in our backyard and we have no relationship with them. That's stupid. And many wonderful things are already coming from that relationship and those collaborations. You know, we think of it in twofold relationships and partnerships on campus, which do not necessarily happen, do not emerge organically. It's a lot of conversations about what is happening in our department, you know, this department and that division, what is the EOPS doing, and how can we make sure that TRIO knows of some of the things that we offer. So that's a lot of relationship formation and creation, and as players change, you know, it's a continual effort. Not only being aware, but like for my office, in part because my money will go away, but in part because we're looking at institutional change, I'm less concerned that people know that, oh, the Office of Access and Equity, so, you know, promoted that. I'm much more interested in other people taking ownership of some of our things and co-partnering with them, or letting their name be on the activities. Our name is on it in a sense of like, and this is an equity issue. You know, our food pantry, our meal program, our textbook resources, helping to subsidize some childcare. I mean, those are more direct things. We do a lot on the instruction side as well. But so there's on-campus connections. We have a lot of community connections that are happening in part through some of our advisory boards. I have community members on my equity committee on campus. And certainly our economic and workforce development, we have a very robust program there and got a grant to do more regional things. I always forget the name of it. It's doing what matters for jobs in the economy. So it's a lot of skill building, a lot of connecting people with certificates and programs and skill building, 21st century skills and whatnot. Our programs that address specific populations, like our disability services program that's in the process of changing their name, our foster youth program, we have a housing and food insecurity task force under us. Our EOPS advisory board, transfer advisory board, intentionally brings people in from social services, nonprofits, and the community leaders to both give their perspective, to help us see what we're not seeing, to help us and our students connect with resources that are needed to make sure we're not missing any grant opportunities or other events or activities that we can leverage for our students' success.
So I'm going to kind of combine the last two questions. Thinking about what kinds of actions you see as something that would serve your work today, what's your ultimate vision of what success would look like in that? And I would just say that as we were talking, Orle, about bringing people together to solve local problems, for me, part of what I would like to see is youth participating in being a part of the problem solving for a local community, so that they grow up feeling ownership of those issues and building places that they want to be a part of. So I would like to be a part of, an opportunity to engage youth more in that type of activity. Maybe you have examples of that already.
No, that's a good suggestion. I guess in looking at how to bring about change, for me, it's primarily local. And so every day I get an email. I get probably 5 to 10 emails of petitions or asking for $3 to support this particular candidate or this activity. And while I intellectually know I should respond, and that if no one responds, change will not happen, I prefer to give my $3 to something happening in Tehama County and making the context for what happens here. And so I think people sometimes, either out of lack of being informed or lack of motivation.
In the fall, we're going to help sponsor a Camp Wellstone, modeled after work that Paul Wellstone's doing for community. So for community college students, because I think the current one is UC or CSU schools. So we'll be soliciting students from different community colleges. We're going to kind of go from there to a broader student leadership program that we're in the middle of developing, and I have student ambassadors who work for me who are doing more of that outreach, building some of those skills, getting other students involved. For us, it's definitely decreasing the achievement gap among students so that we have greater equity there. And increasing support, the support that students have either through worksite learning, work study, work, other housing support. We have a great need in our county, we're not alone, for housing support for students who don't have any children, and especially young people who don't have any children. If you have children, or especially if you're single, don't have children, there are more clear pathways for how to get housing support. Often, we have several students who are homeless, who are living in their cars, who are couch surfing, and of course, multiple challenges related to that. So, in a related sense, a greater awareness among service providers and those at the campus about both the challenges that those students faced, but also, from an asset perspective, everything that they overcame to show up and be in your class that day. From taking the bus 2 hours and the childcare and the negative messages that you got. That's really important. And at a community college and maybe a CSU level as well, I think statewide we're working on, and we need to take it on ourselves, multiple really clear pathways. If you're looking for a certificate, there was a report that came out just recently about students from community colleges earning after 4 years with certificates, so not an academic transfer level degree, but with certificates, $56,000. So there's definite clear benefits for education, both in terms of certificate and bachelor's is a key social determinant of health, but connecting those pieces, but we need to be able to meet students where they are and support them so that they can actually persist and succeed.
And I think I would just end with the idea that, this idea of making the local global, and I think that's a really great thing to think about in terms of a rural region, is how are we doing the work at the local level and really solving our own local problems, and at the same time connecting those problems to the broader national problems or issues globally that we deal with as a planet. I think we have a real opportunity and a need to do that in some of our rural regions. What are we doing now?